Thank you so much, Kathy, for the introductions. The other day, our colleague Peters shared this news article with me. This piece says, "Beautiful Cambodia is exotic and friendly." The writer describes the country as having a very good food, beautiful beaches, mountains, forests, friendly peoples, and I quote, "the largest religious complex ever built in the history of the world." But religion is not history in Cambodia. It is very much alive. People use Buddhism and Hinduism, among others, to solve many social issues. So, in this talk, I am looking at how people practice religions in order to address workplace health and safety. Even when these people are engaging in multinational construction projects that involve the participations of French, Japanese, Korean, Chinese, Vietnamese, and Cambodian companies. In other words, I explore how religious and cultural norms interact with state law and other laws such as company codes to protect construction workers. As this talk focuses on what is practiced on the ground, I will rely a lot on the empirical data, which I obtained through attending the multi-stakeholders meetings and through interviewing with some employers, owner of the companies, engineers, workers, government officials, trade unions, and non-governmental organizations, peoples. But before finding the solutions, I would start off by sharing some broader context, which hopefully provide a better picture on some of the things that could have contributed, even indirectly, to the current situation and issue in the construction industry.
That has contributed to this issue. But in order to do that, I would like to take us a little bit to what happened in the Cambodian history, and we should go back to about 47 years ago. So starting in around 1975, Cambodia has this period, what we call the Khmer Rouge regime. So during that period, the leader at the time, they want to create a society that were free from social classes, as well as to build a society based on the agrarian society. So in order to do that, they implemented the policy where they would execute educated people and people who has skill and knowledges. And as part of those policy as well, people in the capital was forced to move out of the city in order to live in the communal area in order to do agricultural work. And in that period as well, in terms of religion, the leader want to eliminate the religious practices. So even though Cambodian in the past for thousands of years has been practicing animism, Buddhism, and Hinduism for a long time. So according to some scholars, what the kinds of practices or religion that happened at the time was not formal. So what can only exist, only happen in the minds of people, or in other case, animism might still continue. Cambodian has this really strong belief in supernatural being. So we believe that mountain, river, rock, forest have spirit. We also believe in ancestral spirit and being. And of course, we believe in ghosts. But this is something that people can practice individually. But in terms of the formal religious institutions like pagoda, churches, or mosques, these were either abandoned, destroyed, or they were used as a torture place of peoples. So at the end of the Khmer Rouge, these kinds of religious building and religious practice was quite shattered. And at this period as well, about a quarter of the Cambodian population died. So at this point, there was a really strong need of development in different sectors of the country. So when the Khmer Rouge regime ended, religion started to revive a little bit, but very slowly, because at that time, we were under the occupation of Vietnam. So the occupiers focus was not on religion, but it was on implementing the communist and planned economy. So it's only later on that religion started to revive, that when Cambodians started to open up. So this was around in 1989. So in 1989, Vietnam formally withdrew from Cambodia, and Cambodia started to make shifted, at least in theory, toward democracy. And at that time, Cambodia also adopted a free market economy. And after the end of the Khmer Rouge and to this period where the Vietnam left, Cambodian has a baby boom. So after this 1998 and 1999, and when the country started to adopt market economy, it's also adopt policy to attract foreign and local investors to invest in different sectors of the country. So initially, it was the government sector that started to attract foreign investors. And lots of workers from who used to do agricultural work. So this is also put into context that before, during the Khmer Rouge, and also before that, Cambodia focused a lot on agriculture. And now during this period, in the 1990s, government sector was the major industry. So people, especially women, have to migrate from the rural area and have to abandon some of their gender role, where Cambodian women used to stay at home. So now they migrate to the city and work as government worker. On the other hand, men would stay in the countryside to do agricultural work. And sometimes they also go and work in the transportation, construction, or fishery. But there is a shift in the kinds of work when it started in 2000. So in 2000s, Cambodian has a really big boom in construction. There are a lot of investment in this sector. And this kind of investment, especially large-scale building, it needs a lot of labor, usually unskilled labor, which is something that Cambodian produce a lot. This is also because during the Khmer Rouge regime and the period after, Cambodian education system was really broken. So people did not really acquire lots of skill and knowledge. So we really produce lots of cheap as well as low-skill labor force. And this met really well with the construction sector that require a large labor force. And unlike the government sector, which only need women, or fishery, probably men work more, the construction sector absorbs both men and women into the construction industry. So you might see in the animated picture I show here, it is not just one person in the family, and sometimes married couples or family as a whole would migrate from the rural area to work as a construction worker in the same construction site. And sometimes their children also go with them. And at this point, I would also like to show a video which I just took. So this video here, it's only just taken a few years ago. It's just to show a part of Cambodia that was under the construction. It was at the coastal area. So now at different parts of the country were under the construction. And when it's come to these construction sector, so the worker who moved to work as a construction workers, as I mentioned before, many of them are farmers. So they have to change from the work that they do agricultural work, but now they have to engage in the industrial work. And they also have to migrate. And some of them, their background is farming, so now they have to do something else. And many construction workers also work seasonally. So part of the year, they are construction workers, and part of the year, when it's time to come to do farming, they will go back and do the farming. So, and because of this, there are lots of risks involved. So many construction workers are paid by the number of days that they work. And usually they do not have any contract, and they do not have any insurance when they get injured. In this picture here, also, you might see the pictures of the shoe. So these are the shoes of the 2 construction workers that I interviewed. So they wore this kind of shoe while they are working. And in the picture on this side here, it showed the person who's trying to get into the worker accommodation. So when we were there to interview workers, the gate to the worker accommodation was closed, was locked. So that is how we get into the construction site to meet workers and interview them. There are really different kinds of theory as to what caused these kinds of injury. And according to those I interviewed, in general, they said that this is because we really lack the state law. We don't have enough of it. And even when state law exists, they are not implemented. And this is also the reason that's why many construction workers can really get away, even though they do not provide any health or safety equipment for workers, because the law is not clear. And I would like to quote a safety manager who said that it is good to have state law than not having state law. Like today, free. Everyone just do whatever they want. It depends on their conscience. So it's, in a way, he said that company might decide to protect worker or not. It's really depend on their strategic interest. Sometimes they might be have some willingness to protect workers, but some other time they might change their policy and do not protect workers. And at the same time, the workers themselves are unfamiliar with the use of safety equipment, because in the past, they do not use any safety equipment. And now the safety equipment is sort of like a new phenomenon for many workers in Cambodia. And I would also like to quote another project manager who said, quote, "Everybody say safety first, but in fact, every time there's a cost issue, unfortunately, safety is the first service to be cut off," unquote. So, so there are a lot of issues with the regulation. And in the case of Cambodia, many people that I interview think that there could be something beyond technology, beyond what people can do, because they think that spirit or something that we cannot see can also cause injury. And I use the word spirit here to refer to different kinds of, well, spirit or ghosts. So they can be good ghosts, not so good ghosts, mischievous ghosts, or in Cambodia you call neta. So neta refers to a kind of spirit that oversee a territory, a land, or an area. And neta will decide how to protect the people who are there, or whether neta are going to cause anything. So when it comes to spirit or ghosts in Cambodia, many people believe that some of them are good ghosts, but some of them can also be troublemakers. So, and those who are troublemakers can really cause sickness or injury when people engage in appropriate behavior or breach etiquette, or to offend the angry ghost. So, for example, by not acknowledging their presence. And even, for example, even workers that I talked to, they said that at certain places at a construction site that they used to work, some people seems to trip or fall down at that certain place all the time. So they think that probably it's the work of the spirit. That's why people, when they reach that place, they always fall down. And this belief that spirit can cause injury is not just among workers, trade unions, engineer, even the owner of the company also thinks that spirit can also play a role in order to cause injury or to safeguard workers. But of course, there's some good news because in Cambodia, we think that there's some way we can do in order to find solution to the causes that are caused by spirit. What we can do in Cambodian context is that we have the magic man or shaman or sometimes monks who can be consulted, and then they can communicate with the spirit to find out what can be done in order to avoid breaching the protocol of the spirit. And if any etiquette has already been breached, then what can be done in order to remedy the situations. So, and at the same time, many Cambodians believe that they can also co-opt spirit by turning evil spirit into good spirit through making religious ceremony. And this is quite important in the case of the construction, because spirit can really control a certain land, and the construction really involve the construction over the land. So there's a crossing between human and non-human here. So in this slide here, there's a picture of the groundbreaking ceremony. So one is more religious one, and one is less religion. So in the case of the groundbreaking ceremony, usually people perform it at the start or before the start, just to mark the start of the construction. And it is usually performed at the same time by making religious offering to the spirit who are living there. But now groundbreaking ceremony has performed at different places that people sometimes adapted it by just performing it, but do not include so much religious practices in there. For example, in the Cambodian way or in Cambodian culture, this groundbreaking ceremony is always performed by taking the element of Hinduism and Buddhism and perform it. But now in Cambodia, even we build churches or mosques, groundbreaking ceremony are also performed, but they just do not use the elements of Buddhism and Hinduism. But for those that really believe that spirit play a role to cause injury, they really think that a religious ceremony is more than welcome. So a safety engineer that I talked to, he said that superstition is normal for Khmer. So Khmer here, it refers to Cambodian peoples. They must have a religious sermon. It must be there. It's always happened. They do that in any wedding. Before the construction, they must make offering, groundbreaking ceremony. They need to have it. So he really emphasized that they really need religious ceremony, even though he's an engineer. But at the same time, of course, he talked about the importance of having safety standard. Here I would like to show the video of an elaborated groundbreaking ceremony. And in this video that I am going to show also, it features a lot of religious practices. But for those who are familiar with the Cambodian context, we can also see that this kind of performance or religious practices also convey the social, political, and economic status of those who are involved. In this picture here, we can also see that senior government officer also attended the ceremony. So in Cambodia, if there are senior people or political people who attend such ceremony, and it conveys a lot that there is a connection between those at the construction site and those in the government. So there's a lot of politics involved as well. So I would like to show the video now. So the kinds of ground breaking ceremony that has been shown in the video, it is usually a really like celebration. But when it comes to constructions and also when it's come to pleasing the spirit at the construction site, people usually make continuous offering as the construction progress. So as the safety engineer said that in some construction sites, after they build and lay concrete about 4 or 5 floors, then they will make another offering. And this kind of offering usually undertaken by the company or by subcontractors. But individual, they also make the offering by themselves. For example, I can give some two example here. So in the case of one engineer, he said that before he start to engage in any activity to lift heavy equipment at a construction site, he would pray to the spirit, or he would buy candy or some kind of small food, and then he would put that in an area that he believed that the spirit might be living there before he engaged in the activity that might carry risk. And workers similarly also said that they would pray to the spirit of the land or to the spirit living there when they engage in the construction activities. And the picture here, this does not come from the construction site, but it's also show the small offering that people made. So in Cambodia, we believe in the spirit of the tree, that the spirit might be living in the tree. And sometimes we make offering and make small house for the spirit that's shown in the picture. And the small offering can also involve the small food or little food as shown in this picture here. It doesn't need to be a lot. And these kinds of practices of observing spirit, many people believe that it does work if it is performed in a very elaborated way or in a Cambodian way. So I interviewed an owner of a construction site, and his construction was not just Cambodian owned. It is a multinational construction that has the involvement of the Japanese company. So he told me that in one of his construction projects, they were all in a rush to start the construction. So and before the construction, they did some groundbreaking ceremony and make some offering to the spirit. But he said that it was not that perfect because everyone just want to get it done and start the construction, because he said in construction you need to really start it quickly in order to save money, something like that. And then he said that on the first day when the construction started, one of his engineer walked into the construction site. He just said that he just made a short way there for few steps, and then the heavy equipment fall from the crane and then hit the engineer. Of course, they sent the engineer to the hospital and treat him. But at the same time, he discussed with his co-investor of like, what are we to do in order to address this situation? Because in the Cambodian context, especially in the construction, if anything happened on the first day, it's really a bad omen. And it can also mean that a lot more trouble will come later on. And then after discussing for quite some time, they agreed that they should do it in the Cambodian way. So by that, they decided that they would invite the famous monk that can address this issue. And they was able to find one. So the monk come and bless the building at different part of the construction site. And he told me that on that day of the blessing, it started to rain. So in Cambodia, the rain also signifies something. It's also to clean and to purify things. So it seems like it's something new is coming too. So he said that from that day on, there was no more injury at his construction site. And I would also like to make a a quote, to quote what he said when he referred to the blessing by the monk at his construction site. This is what he said, quote, the question is what caused the injury? How could we know? We also don't know. But when we don't do it, he referred to making the religious ceremony, we also don't know what else would happen. But if we do it by engaging in religious ceremony, there is nothing to lose. The monk arrives and problem ends. So that's what he said. But at the same time, there are also some frustration by some people that I interview when it comes to the practice of religion or by using a religious ceremony in order to address the problem. In one case, and it was also quite recent as well, in December 2019, well, we do not know whether they perform any religious ceremony before the start of the construction or how they perform in it. But this is a pagoda, a Buddhist pagoda. And when the pagoda was being constructed, the building collapsed and it took the life of some workers. So we are not sure how, to what extent this religious ceremony were able to address the problem. And some companies also abuse the cultural and religious practices. So they only perform the ceremony, but they do not require workers to wear any safety equipment. But it seems that religion oftentimes, and now it's also increasing as more foreign investors come to Cambodia, there seems to be a merge between the cultural norm and other different kinds of practices, cultural practices, and also legal practices. And sometimes this belief in religion are transformed into social action, or sometimes this social action and cultural norm just come and merge together in order to protect workers. So in one case, at this construction site, the worker told me that they used to work before. When they work at that site, the worker fall down from the high building. So after that time, that groups of workers who know the one that fall down felt so uncomfortable working at that place because they think that probably the spirit was there, so they feel afraid. So what their supervisor asked them to do is that they would now work in small group in order to do construction work. So in a way, they think that by working in small group, they feel safer, even though there might be spirit in there, but it might calm them down a little bit. But on the practical side, the supervisor said that when people work in group, if anything happens, they can promptly inform their supervisor. So it's also helped the worker practically. And in another case, in one company, the owner of the construction provide organic vegetable to the worker 1 or 2 a week. And he said that he does that for different kinds of reasons, for religious reason, cultural reason, business reason. And then he explained that like this. So he said that this worker come to work for him at his construction site. So probably there's a spiritual connection between him and the workers. That's why they are able to meet at that point in time. And he also said that, who knows, in previous life, this worker might have been his relative. So by practice, the Buddhist value, by practice compassion, or we call it loving kindness, then he can practice his religion, but also to help workers. And by providing this vegetable to worker, he also looked at it in a strategic way. He said that when he provides vegetable to the workers feel happy and they are in good mood. So if they are healthy and in good mood, they might be more willing to work for him. And it's also made the construction go smoother without disruption. And at the same time, he looked at it as a benefit for him. Also, he just thinks that this is also form part of his corporate social responsibility. So, and he used all of this social corporate responsibility factor, cultural factor, religious factor, all together. He used it as a promotion to sell his condo. And he said that it's really work, that by doing and showing people that his company really construct building safely in accordance to the Cambodian way, and by really caring about society, people buy it even before the construction finish. In conclusion, it seems that in the case of Cambodia, addressing the health and safety issue, it's not, and it cannot really depend on one legal norm, or either it's state-based or non-state-based, or it's a culture or religion. Because even religion in itself, even the practice or the performance of groundbreaking ceremony, it does not really come from one religion or one religious norm. At least in the case of Cambodia, it includes the element of Hinduism, animism, and also Buddhism all come at the same time. And another thing is that it seems that we cannot really depend on one actors, whether they're state or non-state, whether they're company or monk, to address all of these problems by themselves. So it seems that a partnership approach where different actors come together, then collectively probably they can solve more problem more effectively than one actor do it alone. And I would like to end this presentation by providing the quote of the owner of the construction company. So he said that with so many constructions and increasing number of construction like today, even when the ministry sent 500,000 staff to oversee Delhi, it would not work. At my construction site alone, 16 buildings and 21 floors, I believe that if the ministry properly teaches the engineer, the architect, and owner about state law, and these people are also trained in Buddhism, it is a good combination of law, then even the ministry come to inspect once a month, it would be enough. So that's sort of like summarize what I would like to say, and thank you.
Thank you, Ratana, for that great presentation, really rich and great visuals to help us get our mind around the context that you're dealing with in Cambodia. I wanted to start off with one question, and then we'll maybe open up the floor and see if others have questions. So my question was about, so most of the examples that you gave suggested that there is an alignment between kind of the state laws, or what we could call the goals, at least of, if we imagined having workers' compensation laws or safety laws, and the religious norms, that they're both kind of pointed in the same direction, so that it's nice to draw on both, right? I'm wondering if there were examples that you came across where there might be a misalignment, that is to say, somewhere where the religious practice or the religious belief might be said to be contributing to harm or working against the interests in safety in Cambodia, because then you would have a little bit of a trickier job, right, in determining how to weigh those various things. Can you think of an example where that is perhaps the case?
Yeah. So at least in the case of Cambodia, when we look, I would like to start off by saying that Buddhism is the religion of the state. So in some way, in some of our law, it's also include the elements of Buddhism in there. But at the same time, at least in the case of the construction, it's difficult to say that the state law seems to be in alignment with the Buddhist principle or what has been practiced in Buddhism or in other kinds of religion. This is also in the case of construction because construction in Cambodia, it's involved a lot of money. And there's a lot of issue in Cambodia. We call it the gift issue. The gift issue here, it refers to different kinds of gift, right? And some people would call it the petrol money or the tease money, where they give to the government officer when they come to inspect the building. So, I am I'm not able to say at this point what is the policy of the state law, like what the state want to regulate in the construction industry, because this construction industry has been booming for over 20 years, and we hardly have any law to regulate health and safety. So in one way, we don't really have a really clear law to compare. There's some regulation in place. Construction law was just adopted in recent year, but it's really quite broad and really it does not really address the issue of health and safety. The health and safety guideline was only just passed recently. I think it's either last year or this year, but it's only a guideline that has been adopted by the ministry in with the support of Australia. So it is not a law. So in a way, if the state wants to really regulate this industry, then the law and the enforcement would be there. And at the same time, if we look into the religious practices, of course, if we take all of it, and it's also really depend on what kinds of value in this religious value we are taking and then implement it on the ground. So in the case of one construction company that I talked to, he interpreted some value of Buddhism such as compassion, and then he translated into corporate social responsibility. And he interpreted by adopting the safety standard by hiring another company to audit his company. So it is this transferring of a religious value. And at the same time, he also looked into the religious practices in a what he called the psychology way. He thinks that since many workers, they are religious, so if they perform a religious ceremony, it's also make the worker feel safer. And people, when they are in good mood, it might also be possible that they are safer. Yeah. But at the same time, there's also some company that simply engage in religious ceremony, but do not provide any safety standard for workers. They seem to abuse all of these kinds of value. They just perform it because it has been practiced all the time. Right. But but they don't really provide any safety standard.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's a nice example, and the gifts too, right? Yeah. You can see functioning different ways. Yeah. Peter.
Thank you, Ratana. This morning on the local radio station, it said that something like 50% of the homeless population in Victoria had a brain injury from work, usually from work before they became homeless. And they don't have any legal recourse, or they might have forgotten that they have legal recourse. If a worker is injured on the job in Cambodia, do they have legal recourse against the builder, or do they just wait to get better or die, or who cares for their health?
So in the case of construction, well, because the state law is not clear. So by putting this into context, in a way, we can say that as a safety manager said, it's really depend on the conscience of the company. So to an extent, it's really depend on the company.
But they're not obliged. There's no legal obligation.
So in Cambodia, let's say the legal obligation is not clear, and but it's there. There's also the issue about implementation. So they are two separate things. In the case of these construction workers, many of them work seasonally. So many of those I talked to are also unlikely to join trade unions because they have to pay the union fee. So they just want to come and work, and sometimes they got paid daily. So they don't want, and they don't want to buy any insurance also. And usually some company, especially the large company and the multinational company, they would buy insurance for workers. But these companies are quite limited compared to the level of construction in Cambodia. So for those companies that do not have any insurance in place, sometimes the worker do not have any recourse, or they don't have any remedy. So if they got injured, the employer would like treat them or send or pay their medical bill, but it looks as if they do it as kindness. Yeah, and I would also like to give an example and go back probably to what I said in the slide. So in the case of this owner that provide vegetable to the workers, I interviewed the owner, but I also interviewed those subcontractors and the workers on the ground to see the effect of what has been implemented at the top. So one of the workers told me, and she said that she really liked her company. Her company really care for her by providing vegetable. And she said that she's willing, even without any pressure or force from outside, to work harder to make the construction place look cleaner and safer if she knows that the state labor inspector would come to visit. So you see, in a way, she just wants to pay back what has been given to her. Yeah.
Scott.
We have an online question from Victor Ramraj. Victor says, thanks for the excellent presentation, Ratana. Following on Kathy's question, I wonder if there is a tension, or in Kathy's expression, a misalignment between Cambodian Buddhist views on gender and the safety of women on construction sites. If so, do you have any suggestions as to how to handle that misalignment?
Well, so in the construction industry, because lots of people migrate from the rural area and come to work, and many of them live at the construction site, sometimes inside the construction site, and also sometimes in accommodation provided by the company within the construction site or close to there. And sometimes, and at least to those workers that I interview, gender-based violence or gender discrimination was quite common. It's also happened among couples at the construction site. So in terms of alignment, I am not sure about Buddhist value in terms of gender, but in Cambodia, at least in the state law, we really promote gender equality, and issue like, but in a broad term, if issue does not concern any politics or something like that, so gender is something very neutral. So they do care, in general, they do care about addressing these gender-based violence. But that is in a broader term. But in the construction sector by itself, and especially among those I interview, so I interview many people or many stakeholders at this sector, there are lots of problems at the construction site, and gender is one of it. And when I ask them, what should we do about this gender-based violence issue or gender discrimination, that was not their focus, because they think that it is important, but it's not yet what they are focusing now, because what they're focusing now is the injury, because the injury is just so common. So that's what they do at the moment. Yeah.
Thank you.
We have a further online question from Kathy, who says, speaking of money, safety gear, boots, jackets, gloves, etc., are the responsibility of the worker in Canada. They have to buy the gear before they start the job. How much do you think cost of personal equipment influences the way companies respond to safety in Cambodia?
So, well, of course, like there is a really like a wage gap between Canada and Cambodia. And in the case of Cambodia, construction workers, many of them are paid daily. So they paid by the number of days that they work. So even for those workers that I interview, I thought it would be easy to get access to them, because I see them everywhere, just even from where I live. But the reality when I start to go and interview workers is that it's so difficult to get access to them, because they would start very early in the morning, and then they do overtime at lunchtime, and then they do overtime in the evening, because this number of hours that they do is the amount of money that they get. So workers also send the money home. So they don't want to, in a way, they don't really want to spend money on buying this safety equipment. But now many construction companies, at least I only talk about those multinational and those companies that engage in a big project, they require workers to have the safety equipment. So workers, in order to do that, they have to buy it themselves, and then only when they do it, they will be allowed to work. But I would also like to point out that safety equipment in Canada probably a bit different from safety equipment in Cambodia. So of course, like we might see in the picture before, like there's like the full gear from the head to the feet, right? But in Cambodia, that's also in theory what happened. But the company also know that the shoe might be more expensive than the helmet. So as long as the worker have the helmet, they can get into the construction site. And that's also like the picture of the shoe I showed you before. The worker have the helmet, but they just do not have the shoe. And in one of those workers that I talked to, when I talk to them, they have some stuff in their pocket, and then later on they took it out, and then it's the safety vest. And then I asked them, why you put it in your pocket? And then she asked me like, but what is for? So they're not really sure what this equipment is for. So she just said that it's a bit annoying. So she never wear it. She just put it in her pocket. Yeah.
It is hard to imagine what a safety vest would do in some contexts. Yeah. We have time for maybe one more question, then we'll end there.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm RV from India, and coming from a not very similar, but a similar context where construction workers are lacking safety gadgets. And this morning only there was a tweet from an Australian cricketer where there was a construction worker building cricket grounds without any safety. So one thing that you mentioned about was how religion plays an important role in case of Cambodia towards moving towards closer to reaching those safety tolerance. But however, in India, it's very opposite, how religion is used, what Kathy called misalignment between But my question is that this is a psychological problem, and this mindset is ingrained in the workers itself, that anything that is given to them by their companies or by their people is a gift or is an act of kindness or gratitude, and there is an unawareness of their own rights. So what do you think that how can we tackle these psychological issues? Because I feel that is the deeper problem that we deal with. And then, are there any labor unions or trade unions that are maybe protesting against that these policies, that instead of doing a religious ceremony, why don't we just get the safety kits? Why, utilize money and resources on that?
Thank you. That's a great last question for you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the questions. So, well, I do not advocate the practice of religion in a way, but it's more about like reporting what has been practiced in Cambodia. So, yeah, there's is also the issue when people abuse the religious ceremony and do not really protect worker in a legal sense. So the interesting thing about this construction sector also is that, as I mentioned earlier, many of them work as workers seasonally, and they don't even want. I should not put it this way. I mean, like because of the wages that they get, so they don't want to spend lots of money. Even some of them are also a bit reluctant to pay for the safety equipment. But if they are provided with safety equipment, then they wear it. So in a way, by not paying, I mean, not wanting to buy the safety equipment, it's also unlikely for them to pay the union fee. So many of them do not join trade unions. This is also because they work seasonally, so they just think that later on they would just move out. So what's the point of paying the union fee? And another thing about trade union in Cambodian is that, well, I also should also paraphrase because I cannot remember the full what exactly was said, but I can paraphrase that. So I asked the company people, like, what about trade union at your construction site? And he looked at me with very surprised. He said, why you ask that question? There's no trade unions. You know, it's more like it doesn't exist. It's like they don't even consider it, why, what the question is for. So there's some trade union in Cambodia that work on construction, but they are outside the construction. They are not within the construction itself. So what is formed, what the union that are formed in Cambodia is that because it's just so difficult to get into the construction site, they have to recruit workers. So any worker from any construction site can just join their trade union. So by not being recognized as trade union at their construction site, it's also difficult for trade union to come and represent workers because then we're not, the company do not know where they're from. But sometimes it works, but most of the time, they also face all of these challenges.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Ratana, and thank you for the great questions. Thank you for the lecture. Let's give her a round of applause.